In a moment, I'm going to play a clip from Luka's introductory press conference with the Lakers. A reporter has just asked a question, and Rob Pelinka is going to explain how the trade came to be. As he responds, I want you to pay especially close attention to the way he answers and the language that he uses. A lot is going to happen in this clip, which is just over a minute, but pay close attention. And then after the clip, I'm going to explain what's going on here.
Yeah, so this all started with a coffee in Dallas where Nico approached us with the concept. And because there was a partnership and a history of travel in the world between Nico and myself working around Kobe Bryant, there was a fabric of trust in the discussions. And these type of deals are incredibly intricate and complicated. And along the way, we knew there would be 248 insurmountable snags to get to the end, and there were. And so over the course of 3 weeks, call it, an issue would come up, and we'd think there was no way to climb the mountain, and we'd figure out a way. Then the next issue would come up, and you just keep going, and you stay committed to the work. You stay committed to trying to get the deal done in a partnership sense. I think a lot of people talk about negotiations in terms of who won and who lost. I try to approach a negotiation in the sense of how do we build a partnership where we can get to the end? And I think that was the lens that we worked and the premise we worked under. And when the concept was initially introduced to us, it was, hey, the only way we can even have these discussions was if it's between owner and GMs. And there was a commitment to that. And if we broke that commitment by talking to anyone else, this day would never happen. So I think trust was at the center of all those discussions. And I called Jeannie.
Okay, so he said so much right there, and he did it rather seamlessly. That was a masterclass in reframing, and there was a lot of psychological framework in there. So before we get to actually what Rob Palinka said, let's take a loose analogy of what is actually happening here. All right, so let's say that you went to college with a salesman, and both of your kids are friends with each other. They stay at each other's houses. So sometimes the car salesman's kid stays at your house. Sometimes your kid stays at their house. You have the same circle of friends that are also parents, and everyone talks to one another and they know each other, etc. And then one weekend, you go to purchase a $65,000 Lexus from the car salesman, and you end up agreeing to pay $2,000 a month for 60 months. So in effect, you're going to pay way over the value of the car, because by the time the monthly payments are end, you will have paid $120,000. So when your circle of friends hears about the deal, everyone says you were ripped off and they're making fun of you. And the car salesman, though, says that he doesn't look at it that way. He just sees that you and him work together to figure out how you are going to drive a Lexus. And he tells everyone at a birthday party a dramatic story about how you overcame a lot of paperwork huddles and financing, but regardless, you are committed to the work, and there was already a fabric of trust because you knew each other, and you managed to get a deal done just before the dealership closed. So we have this dramatic portrayal of what happened, but the car salesman doesn't want anybody to focus in on how much you ended up paying or how it came to be. He wants everyone to know that it was a partnership and you worked together, and in the end you reached that ultimate goal of you driving off the lot with that Lexus. So as I said, that's a loose analogy, but that's somewhat what happened here, right? It's very similar to what happened here. And now let's go over the techniques that are in play for Rob Pelinka. Well, one is we saw abstract language. And so right away, Rob Pelinka uses the word concept rather than trade, which is already very curious, right? Was there a note there that sounded off when Rob Pelinka is talking about what we all know as a trade? He calls it a concept. So right there, we have abstract language to make what transpired more vague and more nebulous. All right, Rob Pelinka also softened what happened. You heard him specifically say he didn't want to use win or lose language. He says people often portray this as winning a negotiation or losing a negotiation, something to that effect. But that emphasizes the steal that took place, which is Luka Doncic going to the Lakers for 35 cents on the dollar. So he wanted to avoid that altogether. And that's really, again, to soften what actually took place. And he also is shifting away from objective alignment. So one transition that he had, it was a very smooth transition, is he wants to portray this as a collaborative effort. You heard him say the word partnership multiple times. So he wants this to sound like he and Nico Harrison were working together to reach an end result rather than negotiating for the best deal possible. And that is because that's really what happened, right? It was more of a partnership to reach a result. So what are the benefits of using these techniques? Well, Nico Harrison saves face. So here, Rob Pelinka didn't rip off Nico Harrison. We worked together to reach a shared goal. And then also we take the focus away from what actually happened. So this is definitely the most lopsided trade in NBA history. It is quite literally unbelievable in the sense that when people found out about it, they did not believe it happened. And then another benefit is to make the outcome sound desirable for both parties. This is what they both wanted. Nico Harrison wanted this. We climbed this mountain together. Again, we had this very dramatic storytelling by Rob Pelinka, where he even used the word insurmountable, which means unable to overcome. But he said insurmountable, and he used the mountain analogy that they worked together to scale, right? And as we know, the trade terms were fairly straightforward here. Here, it's really just matching salary. I think the biggest question would be, how do we make this look more legitimate? But as we know, the Mavericks only received Max Christie, Anthony Davis, and a first round pick that, given that Luka is now on the Lakers, is probably a non lottery pick. So, but Rob Pelinka wants to make this sound like a desirable outcome for both parties, again, to get away from the harshness and the reality of the trade that so many people are talking about. All right. So, what again, to wrap up here, what are some final notes about this clip? Well, one, wait a second, hold on. How is a negotiation between two GMs a partnership? That is quite the transition, but we saw Rob Pelinka rather masterfully make that transition to where, as you're listening to him, if you're going along with the story, it seems like it flows, but it doesn't at all. So again, go back to the car dealership. When you go to a car dealership, do you feel like you're going to enter into a partnership with the salesman so that you can end up with a car? That's not what's happening. But that's what a car salesman would love for that to be the feeling that you have, right? So that they can ease you right into whatever terms that can lead you into the car, that have you driving away at the end of the negotiation, which they're not going to refer to as a negotiation. They would say that you're more working together to come to an outcome. But again, what Rob Pelinka described doesn't sound like a negotiation from two GMs who are looking out for their own best interest. Also, and I mentioned this earlier, the use of the word insurmountable is particularly dramatic because it means unable to overcome. And this trade wasn't that complex, and they were obviously able to overcome all of the issues. The Rob Pelinka said it was 248 issues, referencing Kobe Bryant there, but he just made it sound like this trade was so difficult to come about, and they had to remain committed to the work. And then one other note here is the secrecy angle. So Palinka says that secrecy was necessary for getting the deal done. And he even goes as far as to say that the deal wouldn't have happened if that secrecy wasn't kept. And he used different words, but the point is that this deal needed to remain a secret. We know why it needed to remain a secret for the Lakers. But why was this commitment so necessary for the Mavericks? Why was this a good thing for the Mavericks? So you can argue that Luka wouldn't find out, but the Mavericks also don't find out what what they could receive for Luka, like what the market value would be for Luka in the current marketplace. And as we know from other recent trades, like the Mikal Bridges trade, the Kevin Durant trade from the Nets to the Suns, looking at the what's the other trade here? I can't think of it at the moment. But Rudy Gobert trade, and there's another trade too where we know that even quality role players are commanding several first round picks for a deal to get done. And here we have a generational superstar that doesn't even receive near the haul that these other players are. And so that is why secrecy, we can understand why secrecy was a really good thing for Rob Pelinka. And he's right. If this gets out, the deal doesn't get done. But why is that such a good thing for the Mavericks? And this partnership that Rob Pelinka has entered into, along with Nico Harrison, it sounds more like the ultimate goal is less about making an ultimate trade, an equitable trade, and more about getting Luka, and I have here to the Mavericks. It should be the Lakers. This sounds like it's more the end goal is more about getting Luka to the Lakers than it is making an equitable trade where Dallas receives fair compensation for a generational superstar who is just about to enter his prime. He still hasn't even entered his prime. So if you listen back to the clip, you listen closely, there's a lot going on in what Rob Pelinka is saying. So I will link to this press conference, by the way, was streamed by WFAA. I will link to this press conference in the description, and I will put a timestamp at where the clip of Rob Pelinka explaining how this trade came to be. There will be a timestamp when he starts talking.